I'm joined today by one of Tax Risk Underwriting Manager's panel experts, tax attorney Schalk Pieterse from the tax law firm Pieterse TRM Erasmus. Schalk, thank you for joining me. Many business owners are worried, angry, and frustrated as this lockdown continues to cause irreparable financial damage. Many will lose their businesses, their livelihoods, and they'll also have to retrench staffs because they do not qualify for the debt relief either available because of complicated criteria or it's insufficient. This is economically devastating, and what businesses are interested in is how do they remain solvent and survive COVID-19. From a tax management perspective, in exceptional circumstances, there are additional remedies available to the taxpayer within our existing tax laws, which is in addition to what SARS is offering. However, it is only if you know how to access these. COVID-19 constitutes exceptional circumstances in certain cases, and there are very specific provisions within the Tax Act that deals with exceptional circumstances. So let's look at the remedies available and shed some light on what these exceptional circumstances mean. So my first question to you is, hypothetically, our VAT return is due at the end of the month, all right, and we know that payment can't be made. Must I submit my tax return without payment, or must I hold off the submission until I have sufficient funds?
Melanie, thank you for having me. To answer your question in summary, it's advisable always to submit your VAT return. Don't ever not submit your return unless you have a specific arrangement in place. So even if you can't make payment on the due date, it'd be advisable to still submit that return because it's a criminal offense if you don't, in terms of Section 234. So Tax Administration Act requires you to submit the return, and if you can't make payment, that's when you enter into some sort of an arrangement.
Okay, so if we now submit our tax return or pay a return without payment, can we pay it off while still remaining tax compliant? And if so, how do we go about it, and over what period can we repay this?
Yes, you can. You can apply to pay it off, and SARS will request some financial information. Now, the terms of the payment arrangement, Melanie, however, will depend on your financial position. So the application is supported by legal submissions that need to be made and requirements that must be met, specific requirements. So the decision and the outcome is discretionary, but SARS must take into account the financial circumstances of the taxpayer.
Thanks, Schalk. So let's say I'm already in arrears with SARS and I will not be able to settle the full outstanding tax debt, nor can my business repay the arrear debt in monthly installments. What can I do to save my business and my employees?
Well, Melanie, we have dealt with the payment arrangement above, and that can be over a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, in some cases 24 months. But if we get to the debt relief mechanisms available other than a payment arrangement, you're looking at a compromise offer. Okay. Now, in terms of SARS will take an amount that you present to them in full and final settlement of the arrear debt, which is obviously much less than the outstanding debt that you have with SARS, which they will then write off permanently. Now, again, the decision to approve or decline an application or settlement offer of this nature is discretionary. Because it's discretionary, SARS must comply with certain provisions, not only in the Constitution, but in admin law. So expert advice is important. Legal requirements must be met. Your financial position must be set out properly and plays a very instrumental role. Look, in some cases, you could get all your interest and penalties written off. And for example, 50% of the capital debt, or 20%, or in some cases, 80%. It all depends. It depends on what your financial circumstances are. Now, what's important to note, Melanie, this is not a debt relief mechanism in terms of the Disaster Management Act, etc. It's available to all taxpayers. It's always been available, but it's a complicated application. But with the right help, it's certainly a very useful remedy for taxpayers during this time. It's not something you can exploit or abuse. And SARS have a team of experienced attorneys and consultants that consider these applications. So it needs to be presented to them properly. Once the amount offered is given as a once-off amount, it can even be deferred thereafter over a period of time. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much. Quite comprehensively. Schalk, will SARS ever consider cancelling or voiding any of my arrear penalties and interest should I enter into a payment arrangement with them?
So you're asking whether you can do the payment arrangement and then remit the penalties? The answer is yes, Melanie. Once the total tax debt has been repaid in full under the payment arrangement, you can thereafter remit your penalties. You have to show exceptional circumstances. So in other words, a natural or human-made disaster, serious illness, serious financial hardship. So obviously, exceptional circumstances may include the COVID-19 pandemic. You'll just have to show that your default, there's a causal link, draw a link with the default to the penalty and show that's why you've defaulted owing to COVID-19.
Okay.
But yes, you can.
Okay. Schalk, from a business perspective, I need my tax compliance status to reflect as compliant on the SARS e-filing website in order for my business to submit tenders or to receive payments. But currently it reflects as non-compliant due to my outstanding tax debts. Will I be able to become tax compliant on e-filing?
Yes. Yes, Melanie, you can. Once you enter into a payment arrangement, even before the first payment is made, you can immediately apply for your tax compliance status. Once you've entered into a compromise, you can immediately apply for your tax compliance status. Once you've entered into a suspension of payment, you can apply for your tax compliance status. So once signed, once you have those agreements and arrangements in place, even though you haven't paid off the whole debt, you can get your compliance status immediately. Initially, they will decline it, and then you just need to submit a challenge, which is something we do often.
Okay. So, Schalk, can business owners and individual taxpayers ask their own tax practitioner or accountant to assist them in these matters that we've discussed?
Melanie, it's not that tax practitioners or the taxpayer themselves can't do it. They can, but the issue is the actual application. You know, it can get complicated, and it often requires an understanding of multiple tax laws and how to interpret the tax laws to assist the taxpayers. Let me give you an example. If the taxpayer's application is turned down, whether it be the compromise or the payment arrangement, and you want to challenge it, you're going to challenge that with administrative law to get the application through. So it gets tricky. Taxpayers must know their rights. They must know when they are being bullied into an arrangement that otherwise could have been much more reasonable. You have a right to insist that the consideration and agreement be reasonable, be procedurally fair, be lawful. You have a right to ask that exceptional circumstances be considered. You have a right to ask that your financial hardship be taken into account. So yes, they can do it themselves, but consult an expert to address your rights under these acts and the Constitution, because it can definitely become tricky.
Okay, so I think what we've discussed today shed some light to say that obviously taxpayers do need expert advice. So how do distressed business owners or taxpayers get hold of you if they need assistance with this, Schalk?
Melanie, if they want us to assist with any of these issues, they are welcome to engage with us directly. They can email us on info@trm, so that's T for Tango, Romeo, Milo, law, trmlaw.co.za, or they can visit our website at www.trmlaw.co.za or complete the client contact form on the website. The number is also on the website.
Schalk, thank you very much for your time today. In closing, business owners and taxpayers can take back control. There are various provisions in the current tax laws which provide tax relief during exceptional circumstances. These provisions are not well known, and are complicated to deal with, as we've heard today. But don't let the lack of know-how be the reason you lose your business. There are tax legal experts who are able and ready to assist you. Thank you again, Schalk, for your time today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.